I'm good. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Bu Nur Kamila. How are you?
Good, Alhamdulillah. Thank you. Dr. Mulisin Rasikri will be the moderator for the first keynote speaker. I'd like you to uh, take your role. Thank you.
Thank you. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. And good morning, ladies and gentlemen, keynote speakers, distinguished guests, and all dear participants. Welcome to this first keynote session. So my name is Mulisin Rasikri, and I'll be serving as the moderator for this first keynote session. And as you already know from the rundown, that our first keynote speaker today is Professor Slamet Setiawan, PhD, who is already with us. But before Professor Setiawan present his work, allow me to introduce a little bit about him. So Professor Slamet Setiawan is a professor in the Faculty of Languages and Arts at the State University of Surabaya, or UNESA, here in Indonesia, where he earned his bachelor's degree in 1992. Then he completed his master's degree at the University of Auckland in New Zealand in 2001. Professor Setiawan later continued his doctoral studies at the University of Western Australia in Perth and successfully earned his PhD in 2011. And since joining the State University of Surabaya, Professor Setiawan has held many prestigious positions at the university. And currently, Professor Setiawan serves as the head of the sub-department of Global Partnership and Promotion. Professor Setiawan has also received numerous awards and research grants from the government of the Republic of Indonesia. And Professor Setiawan has also published extensively in many prestigious journals within the fields of education and language teaching and learning. And today, Professor Setiawan will be presenting one of his works titled Culturally Responsive Teaching in ELT, which is very important for us to learn. The subtitle is Does It Suit the Indonesian Context, right? And Professor Setiawan will deliver his presentation for approximately 40 minutes, and it will be followed by a 20-minute questions and answer session. All right, now, ladies and gentlemen, and all hearted participants, please join me in welcoming Professor Slamet Setiawan. The floor is yours, sir.
Thank you very much, Bapak Mukhlisin, for introducing me. Very honored with your descriptions about me. And also, thank you for inviting me. I would like to start my presentation. Allow me, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
The Honorable Bapak Rektor Universitas Muhammadiyah, yaitu Bapak Dr. Hanafi, the Honorable Ibu Dr. Fitri Amelia, as a Dean of Fakultas Keguruan dan Ilmu Pendidikan Universitas Muhammadiyah Jember, and my colleagues. I think I have met, some people during the sessions early morning. Bu Anita, ada Pak Gun, thank you. I would like to present my topic entitled Culturally Responsive Teaching in ELT. Does it suit the Indonesian context? Keynote speakers, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, when we talk about culturally responsive teaching in ELT, of course, we cannot separate our lived experience around us, where we live. That's why I would like to give you some points about this topic with these points. The first, I would like to explain the definition and importance of CRT, and then core principle and teaching strategies for CRT, challenges in implementing CRT. Number 4, does CRT suit the Indonesian context as the subtitle of my presentation today. And I highlight this point with the red color. Why? Because this is actually our main topic in this KOPI LATTE. 5 and 6, it is a kind of an additional topic that if we have a time we can cover, but if we do not have it, then we can, we can share. I can share the materials, but I will not present it today. Ladies and gentlemen, seeing this image, we will be having a kind of an opinion that the teacher and also the students have a different backgrounds, and we can see in the left we have a lady with dark complexion, and on the right we have a lady with a veil, and the teacher put on her batik. This is a kind of a picture image that lead us to the concept of culturally responsive teaching. This situation is the same as my experience when I was in Australia at that time, pursuing my doctoral degree or PhD degree at that time, because I had opportunity to teach undergraduate students at that time. You know that undergraduate students in the University of Western Australia at that time were various students. They came from different cultures, different linguistic backgrounds, as well as different countries, of course. I remember that one student from Singapore, 2 students from India, United States, and then some of Middle East, and some other countries in the world, because at that time, until now probably, University of Western Australia is a good university, and probably the famous destinations of study abroad in Australia. Now, in that situation, of course, I have to know one by one's cultural backgrounds in order that I can adapt my teaching style with them, and I can make a joke, properly, address them properly. Then it makes the class real and good atmospheres. Unfortunately, I cannot present the picture because it has been very long time. I cannot search, but later I will send it to you about the situation when I teach there. Ladies and gentlemen, we have to know the concept of CRT, culturally responsive teaching. This is a kind of approach, once again, by realizing the situations in the world that people movement from one country to other countries are very possible nowadays. That's why this idea the CRT concept or approach is emerged. The concept is in the grade students' cultural background into learning. What I mentioned earlier, that at that time, the students came from different countries, different cultural backgrounds, different linguistic backgrounds. So we have to integrate that cultures or those cultures into the learning. Number two, this concept is promoting inclusive and equitable education. I would like to highlight the word inclusive in this matter. We Indonesian people usually have a very narrow concept of inclusivity. What we understand so far about inclusivity is, a class contains the students with normal and also with students with special need. Only two elements. But in fact, if we read further about the inclusivity, it is not only the disabled or students in need, but also, for example, in the class, there are students who are from, the have family and don't have, the poor family, from city and from rural area, from, student with different family backgrounds. So that is the inclusivity. And then equitable education, of course, then if we have understood different cultures, then everybody actually has a right to say about their cultures, learning through their cultures. And by having this approach, we expect that the students will, have a better engagements and achievement. Once again, why? Because their own cultural backgrounds can actually a means of achieving a good performance in learning. So that is the concept of CRT. Now, why is CRT important? Number one is support diverse classrooms. Again, as the pictures presented in the first slide, and also my story about my experience during I teach in the University of Western Australia. We support diverse classrooms because the members of the classrooms or students are various. Number two, improve students' motivation and participation. Once again, because they experience their culture, they experience their life, they experience their activity, then the students are motivated and also they are eager to participate in classroom activity. Number three, strengthens teacher-students relationship, what I mentioned earlier, because if we know every student's cultural backgrounds, then of course we can adapt our way of speaking, our way of behaving properly to the students. And we also respect their cultures. There will be no misunderstanding because we know exactly where they are from, what is the background of their life, and many others. And number four, as the previous slide, is promotes equity and inclusion. Now, the third point is core principles of CRT. Number one is recognizing cultural diversity as an educational asset. If we give a chance to the students to learn through their culture, again, it means also that we ask the students we give a chance to students to maintain their cultures. Why? Because they reflect their own cultures in the classroom. And then connecting curriculum with students' cultural context. This is the task of the teachers to design curriculum in which we give a space to the students to expose their cultures. And number 3 is encouraging inclusive participations, like what I mentioned earlier. And number 4 here is developing cultural awareness and reflections. By having CRT, we actually share a good value to other students. And at the same time, we, as the owner of the culture, then reflect how good our culture and then how we preserve our culture. Now, a good question here is, how can teachers integrate cultures into their teaching? And then number 2, how can teachers evaluate cultural responsive lessons? And then what challenges may occur when implementing CRT? I would like to address one by one, and later we will go deeper into Indonesian context. This is the strategy. Number 1 is use culturally relevant materials. Again, as a teachers, we have to be aware of diverse students, various students from different cultures, and then we give a kind of facilities to the students to express. That's why we have to connect the cultures to the materials. As the examples, we bring a kind of, or we read, or we play a story, whatever it is, like a story of Bawang Merah, Bawang Putih, for examples. We use that kind of, artifacts, materials to be introduced to the students. If we teach for examples, in Java. And then encourage students' voice and participations. We give a great chance to the students to express their ideas, their feeling, and their experience through the cultures. And then build strong relationship with the students, of course, because again, if we know somebody's cultural backgrounds, then we will respect, we will understand them, and then we have a very good relationship with them. And then we can adapt teaching styles to diverse learners. Later, in the end of these presentations, in one last slide, there is a topic that you may go deeper as your, for example, PhD topic later, that is differentiated learning styles and teaching. Now, this is the examples. If we address the second questions, how we teach, students applying CRT. Number 1 is only the examples. Students create a visual map of their cultural backgrounds and then include language, tradition, food, and values. You can choose one of them. And then we allow the students to present and explain their maps. So this is the examples of cultural identity map. Later, when we touch about the second topic, I will give you a more information concerning with the cultural identity. This aim is promoting mutual understanding and classroom inclusivity. Once again, you can imagine if there are, for example, 30 students, or maybe 25, or 30, but in Australia at that time, it's not that many. It's only about 15. So if everybody has a different cultural background, then how rich the information we get, how rich knowledge we get from their sharing. If we, for example, assign or give a chance to the students to create a visual map of that culture. And I believe that the students will be very confident to tell, to present, to explain the material because the cultures belongs to them and they experience, they immerse in that society. And then this is another one. Students bring objects representing their culture as artifacts. And then they explains about the meaning and also stories. In Indonesia, for example, they bring batik. And then they tell the story. The student bring keris, for example. Yes. So this object can be, again, a kind of a means, a kind of a facility, to teach and to learn, language or cultures. In this point, again, we encourage respect and cultural awareness among the students. And if we want to apply groups, then we have students for example, students investigate local cultural practices and then conduct interviews with community members, present findings through report or presentations. I'm sorry, I do not know much about Jember, but I know here is there is a kind of a place where Trembesi a lot there. I went there that time, and then I went to the coast. I think that is one of the examples for the students in Jember, for example, to go to. I don't know the place where the Trembesi, trees a lot over there. Actually, they can, for example, describe everything on there, and then they can also, hold an interview with the, related parties who knows a lot about the history or story about that place. I think that's good too. Yeah. Now, in this particular context, the functions of this activity actually is connecting academic learning with real-life cultural context. Ladies and gentlemen, now we come to the third questions related to the assessments in culturally responsive teaching. Because the materials brought by the students and also presented by students are different, then of course we have to apply diverse assessments method. Not only a single, way of assessing the students' achievements or performance. It can be projects, presentations, portfolio, and many other types of assessment. And the second one, allow students to demonstrate learning through cultural perspective. Yes, I mentioned many times that learning through culturally responsive teaching is a very good way because it will enhance the students' achievement. Why? Because they have already got experience. They practice their activity daily and they immerse in that society where the culture belongs. So it is very good. And then number 3 is provide flexible evaluation approaches, like the first point. And the point is for this information function is encourage reflective learning journals. So the students also can make a kind of a note journals for themselves about their improvements by applying CRT approach. Now, this is the challenge of implementing CRT nowadays. So why? Because this topic is relatively new. I mean, in terms of Indonesian context, but if we go to the international, context, it has been applied, years ago. But in Indonesian context, I think it's new. That's why number 1 for the challenge is limited teachers training. I remember when we have a genre-based approach and also CTL, there were many massive trainings around the nations. But if we apply the CRT, I think we need time, to learn and also to digest what is the message and also what is the practice of CRT in Indonesian context. And then number two, our teaching resources, are limited because again, this topic in Indonesia is quite, new. That's why the sources are very, limited and thoughtful. Hopefully in the future, I encourage the participants, teachers, lecturers, researchers can develop, materials which is connected and supported to CRT. And also curriculum constraints. Why? Because we have, a kind of a message from the government and also from our authority that we have to apply, in quotations, a similar curriculum across nations. That's why, applying CRT is a bit challenging. And of course, as a teachers, as a lecturers, we have to improve ourselves by joining, professional development and apply professional development, anytime, especially when we have a kind of advanced, technology. So we have to keep up ourselves. We have to scale up our knowledge and also our skills, to be adapted in a new situation. Now, as reflections, we have to again understand as a teachers, we have to reflect on personal cultural assumptions. Why? Because sometimes there are groups of people who look down other people's cultures. I remember Prof. Marinovsky at that time did a research in Torbian Islands, and then he concluded that this Torbian community, were uncivilized, people simply because of the language use is simple. Again, we have to reflect, we have to enrich ourselves in terms of cultural assumptions. And then as a reflections, we have to evaluate teaching materials for inclusivity. Again, inclusivity doesn't mean only the class combined with students in need, in special need, but inclusivity in this term is, has a broad meaning and broad message. And then seeking continuous professional development. And the fourth here is we have to build partnership with communities and families. Ladies and gentlemen, now come to the second point that is very important because I highlighted with the red colors. Does CRT suit the Indonesian context? Why this question is important to address? Because, for example, I'll take the examples here is in Jember itself, or in Java. There is a school that the students are from the same ethnicity, with the same language, the same cultures. So does the artist still suit to this context? If we have, homogeneous students, please compare to what I have already explained. Also, I experienced that in, another country setting like United States of America, Australia, New Zealand, that the students are from different countries come to that university and then learn in the same class, again, with different cultural backgrounds, linguistic backgrounds, ethnicities backgrounds. What about in Indonesia? What about in Java? What about in Jember? What about in Jombang? In which the class has only similar or the same ethnicities? Does CRT still suits to that context? Now, I would like to give you the example first from different subject. Why? Because our main topic today here is English language teaching, but I give you a kind of illustrations from different subject. Use in mathematics teaching using culturally relevant word problems. I will show you a bit after this, and then apply mathematics to real community context, and then incorporating collaborative problem solving. This is the examples. If it is in mathematics subject. Topic fractions, and then the message here is that the cultural context is Indonesian tradition food, and this is the activity of examples. Use food like martabak, lemper, whatever you have. In Jember probably they have a prol tape, for examples, and many other foods as the the materials. And then we can ask the students if one martabak is cut into 8 slices and Annie eats 3 slices, what fraction did she eat, for examples? So this is the examples. And then the second example, if two families share, one whole lapis legit, how can it be divided fairly? See, so we can use, food, local food as a means of, teaching mathematics in this particular, topic. And then, the message here is connect math concept to students' daily experiences, and then validate cultural food practices. Why? Because, the other students probably and have the same, concepts, and then they know exactly what is lemper, lapis legit, and others. And then they can also compare if they have experience like, pizza for the international food will be okay too. And then mix abstract fractions concrete and meaningful. Instead of saying, okay, 8 misalnya divided into 3, then it will be much easier, to students to figure out the process of fractions by having, facilities and also examples using martabak or other foods. Now, this is the example of social science teaching, integrating local environmental knowledge, using real-life cultural practices in science topic, and then connecting scientific concept with community issues. This is the example. Using local environmental practices such as SUPA, irrigation system in Bali, discussing traditional ecological knowledge in farming and fishing, because that every place may have a different way of fishing, way of farming. And then the third one is linking sustainability topic with local community practices. Yeah, so we can create that kind of, topic, to be blended into our teaching learning process. Now, what about Indonesian context? I mean, CRT Indonesian context. Even though I didn't mention CRT in my paper here, Mas Badrul Tamam from Madura, and then Mbak Shafi and Jihad Nur Rahman actually has already implemented CRT, even though the word CRT is not listed here. The student's perception toward Methodist traditional culinary-based teaching material of English for higher education. Very interesting. Why? Because this paper actually introduces, Methodist traditional culinary that has been designed by the students. The students actually go to the society, and then they do some interviews, something like that, and then they make a kind of materials. You compose material based on the Methodist culinary, traditional culinary, and then they try to present and then put in the piece of paper in the a kind of papers, and then they can present it, tell the story about the Methodist culinary to their friends. So this is the examples. And then the second work of ours actually is here in the creative components of intercultural competence in English language teaching at college. Again, we do not put a CRT, but inside is about CRT. Here, teacher also tried to integrate local culture about Cha and Ning in Surabaya. I don't know in Jember what is it called, but in Surabaya it's Cha Ning, or in Jombang is a Ku dan Yu, something like that. Now, example language and literature teaching using multicultural literature, encouraging storytelling from students' cultural background, and also discussing local and global cultural perspective. Again, this is a kind of literature teaching, language and literature teaching. Because we still use a genre-based approach, even though the term is not commonly used, but we still have a genre, like a narrative, descriptive, and then the procedures. It can be, a way of teaching using a CRT approach. Now, this is the example using local folklore like Kemarin Kundang, Timun Mas in reading lessons, encouraging students to compare local stories with global stories, allowing bilingual or multilingual discussion in class. Again, this actually can accommodate the students, experience and also knowledge about their cultures to share to other students in the classroom. Now, this is the same questions. Is it possible to apply culturally responsive teaching in homogeneous students' background, like what I mentioned earlier? Can CRT can be applied in Jember, in Jombang, in which the class or the students in the classroom are from the same ethnicity, from the same cultural backgrounds? Is it possible? Yes. I will try to give you some illustrations as follows. Yes, culturally responsive teaching, or CRT, can still be meaningfully applied even when students come from a relatively homogeneous ethnic, linguistic, or regional background. We can do and we can apply CRT. Now, this is the concept that we have to understand as lecturers or teachers when we try to apply CRT, because CRT is not limited to multicultural classrooms. It's not the same as Australian setting, United States of American setting, New Zealand setting. It is not, again, limited to multicultural classroom with visibly diverse students from India, from Malaysia, Singapore, the Philippines, from Canada at that time. No, it's not only that. When we apply CRT, it is actually connecting learning to students' lived experiences, cultural values. Nah, ini yang terakhir adalah ini, identity, it's very important. Social realities and community practices. What is the message behind this? Even though the class has homogeneous students, CRT is well applied, can be well applied. Now, the reason behind that is this. Ladies and gentlemen, Alhamdulillah, Allah created us uniquely. Nobody in this world is the same, even a twins. We have what we call here is identity. Then identity actually is built from different elements. It can change as our age, grow older. There are two circles, the small circles inside. There are 6 important elements to build our identity that is constant usually, like ethnicity. When we have these elements, then it is a kind of a fixed. For example, here is an ethnicity. I am Japanese. My friend is Maturis. Another is Medanese. Another one is Makassaris. We cannot change that ethnicity. It's fixed. Age, for example, we cannot change our age, but our age grows, yes. And of course, the elements, the outer circles will also grow. Gender, sexual orientation, identity is a fix. Now, the element of identity is growing, larger and larger as the growth of our age. For example, education, parental status, and then the job classifications, marital status, family backgrounds, and many other elements that can build our identity. That's why then the CRT is well applied because everybody has different identity. Later, I will give you the examples of the topics that we can apply in CRT class. Now, even students is from the same ethnicity, speak the same local language, and live in the same region, but they still possess. This is what I already explained to you, using identity wheel. Cultural practices, local wisdom, family traditions. I believe that one family has a different family traditions. Socioeconomic differences, of course, our family, our parents, ourselves, have a different socioeconomic differences. And also religious experiences. There is a student, for example, who spent a long time in Islamic boarding schools. And some others do not. They only live with the family, and many others. Digital cultures. I don't have, I'm sorry, social media is a lot. What I have only WhatsApp. But you or maybe other students have more than 3, social medias. It can be, I don't know, Lines, it can be TikTok or Facebook, whatever. This brings, again, different identities and also different elements in everybody individually. That's why the question is, why CRT still work in homogeneous classrooms? Because culture, ini penting, very important. Culture is more than ethnicity. Once again, I will bring back to our experience in Australia, that we can understand, easily that they are different. Why? Because they are having different look, they have different language, different behavior, even different outfit. But in homogeneous classroom, it is very different. It's very difficult to be detected. But again, culture is more than ethnicity. CRT does not only refer to race or ethnicity. It can be, again, local traditions, community styles, beliefs, social norms, and occupation, daily practices, values, and many others, like what I presented in Identity Wheels. This is the example, like the coastal students, rural students, pesantren students, urban students. International student, for example, in Indonesia, is very easy to detect that they are from different, for example, different ethnicities and different countries. But in local schools, like in Jember or Jombang, probably, it's very different. In Surabaya, it's very different. Yeah. Now, this is the examples in the EFL classroom using a CRT. In English, for example, using local folk tales in English reading materials, like I have already mentioned. We have a kind of, Kancil and Buaya, and Bawang Merah Bawang Putih, and many others. Discussing local ceremonies and speaking activities. We have Ngaben, we have a in Tunggo in in Tengger, for example, there are many local ceremonies, in our regions. Comparing local and global cultures, of course, then as CRT, applications, we do not limit the students' knowledge. We have to also introduce, other or global cultures. If we talk, for example, we have Borobudur temples, or let's say Monas. We also introduce students in the global, landmarks like we have Eiffel from France and many other places. Encouraging students to explain regional wisdom in English. Yes, so we can use, any traditional artifacts, in our place, in our area, in our regions, using English, like what I did, with students from Madura, exploring Madura's traditional culinary is also the examples. Now, instead of describe Thanksgiving Day that is applied in United States of America, we actually can explain the meaning of Sedekah Bumi in English. And I believe that these traditions, these local ceremonies is still well maintained, in Java, even though not all villages, but we still have, examples that Sedekah Desa atau Sedekah Bumi is also applied in some regions and village in Java. CRT in homogeneous context focus on cultural relevance. Learning material are connected to students' lives. Ini students' life. And then the function is students feel their background is respected and valued. Why? Because they have their own, background and also uniqueness. And as the concept of CRT is allowing the students to appreciate their own culture, understand other cultures, because everyone, again, has its own culture, and interact globally without losing identity. So it's like a global. Yeah, we maintain our local values, but we keep moving, adapting, and knowing the global situation. And then this is the importance, because once again, to avoid our misconceptions, that CRT in homogeneous classroom does not mean artificially creating cultural differences, no, or forcing multicultural topics, but using students' existing socio-cultural realities as learning resources. So again, we have a lot of materials, we have a lot of sources from our students. Now, possible challenges in homogeneous classrooms. Teachers sometimes assume all students are the same. Again, ladies and gentlemen, we have to avoid this, conceptions or misconceptions. Everybody is unique. Everybody has his own experience. Everybody has his own traditions, even though a very little. This can cause overlook individual differences, and then less critical cultural reflections, and then limited global perspective. Why? Because teachers' assumptions is very limited that students are the same. Therefore, when we apply CRT in our classrooms, it can help students to reflect on their own identity, and then we can compare cultures critically and develop intercultural competence. So it is a kind of assets, for the students to develop their knowledge, to bring in the future to live in wider communities. Now, probably this is important too, because from the expert, this is two people who actually introduced a CRT, Jennifer Gay in 2018 and Gloria Letson-Billings 2021, that CRT is emphasizing, empowering learners, affirming identities, and making learning meaningful through cultural connections. And then once again, this CRT can well be applied in both situations, as heterogeneous classroom and also homogeneous classrooms. Ladies and gentlemen, to make it everything, feasible, I give you these examples, the materials or the topic that we can apply in our classrooms in homogeneous, students. Number one is if we teach, description text, describe yourself. By applying this, then of course, everybody will try to describe himself or herself. And of course, the description will be different one and another, including describe father. It is not possible. There are 5 students who describe the same father. So this is also the indications that CRT can be applied in our homogeneous classroom, mother and siblings. Describe your number one, instead of, for example, describing the artist or maybe well-known persons. So it will be much better if we connect the topic into the real life situations that has been experiencing by the students. As the example, yes, okay, because we have to provide, for example, a vocabularies about the physical figures, qualities of the people. Yes, we can describe as, one persons to be the examples, but the assignments, the following up the examples, then it can be individually done by using their own, families, like father, mother, siblings, and also house. Instead of describing, I don't know whose house, maybe president's house or maybe artist's house, it would be much better to describe the student's own house. If there are 25 students, then of course there will be a different descriptions of house, and the student will be very comfortable because they know exactly every corner of the house. Yeah, similar thing about describe your pet. That everybody, if the students has a pet, but if they don't have, then they can describe, anything related to pets. But if they have a pet, then they can describe their own pet. It can be cat, it can be bird, it can be, other animals that they have. And then describe a place you have visited, for example. That's the instruction. So by having this topic, then I believe everybody will have a different topic, different work, different results, and different performance. And here, if we teach a narrative text, for example, we can ask, the students to tell the success of one of student family members or relatives. They can describe themselves about the success, the journeys of life of the members of the family. Besides the results, the process is also very important. Why? Because they can do a kind of interview. So other linguistic skills or other life skills can be, introduced, can be imposed by using this kind of topic. Of course, if they want to describe the success of, their own families, they have to do interview about what is the past, and then what is the challenge, what is the strategy to be successful persons, and not only soft skills like the implications of interview, but also they have a kind of insight how to be successful persons, and then they can, they can copy the lesson from other people to be applied by themselves. And then tell a story you have read or heard. And for the procedures, for example, how to make your favorite food. Everybody has a different favorite food, and then they can actually, demonstrate it. And then how to make your favorite toys. Favorite toys, something like that. Yeah. Now, this is the last as the message. CRT can be effectively implemented in homogeneous classroom because culture is not limited to ethnic diversity. Even students from the same region and ethnicity possesses shared cultural experiences, local knowledge, values, and social practices that can be integrated into teaching to make learning more meaningful, identity affirming, and contextually relevant. This is at glance. Mr. Moderator, do I have a time? Do I still have a time?
Yes, sir. So still have 5 minutes before we continue with the next session, question and answer. 5 minutes.
Okay, good. Thank you. This is only a brief. I just want to show the difference between contextual teaching and learning. Why? Because you may have a question like this, but I give you a kind of for information concerning with this, the difference between contextual teaching and learning, and also culturally responsive teaching. Now, this is the difference. If contextual teaching and learning focuses on connecting subject matters to students' real world situation for meaningful learning, while CRT integrating, this is the important point, integrating students' cultural background, identities, and experiences into instruction to ensure it is culturally equitable and relevant. If it is still vague, then I'll give you some other information here. This is the difference between CTL and CRT. Primary focus is relevant to everyday life and real world. So the point actually is the students experience the thing that has been taught by the teacher in the classroom. For example, they can demonstrate how to make, the food. But remember, if the process of making food in the classroom is probably the same, there is a kind of a demonstrations. But in CRT, every single student can practice him or herself based on their favorite they have. Different. If it is CTL, any food, but in CRT, that individual person or students can demonstrates how to make a food, but not any food is his or her favorite food. Why? Because if any food, then it comes to the CTL. The culture that we introduce in, for example, in the procedure stack here is actually their habit, their eating habit, their favorite food that is different from other people. And then theoretical orientations for the CTL rooted in constructivism and inquiry-based learning, while in CRT, in social justice, equity, inclusions, and cultural affirmations. So again, the CRT, because CRT stands for culturally responsive teaching, everything relates to the culture. And then the culture, of course, then one of the element here is the identities. Everyone has his or her own identity. Teaching approach using real life examples, simulations, inquiry, problem solving, while cultural and CRT here is integrate folklore, cultural, local culture, students' identities, and culturally approaches learning styles. There are many elements actually. I will not read, and I will not present them all because my time is very limited, and I think I have to stop now, and I'll give it to the time to Mr. Moderator. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much for the insightful presentations, and that's very clear. Fortunately, we start this presentation, the first keynote speaker, ahead of time, so we have plenty of time to learn the detail about CRT, which seems to me very interesting because it brings the authentic experience of the student, their identity, and also and also their immediate context into real language learning classroom. All right. Thank you. So now I would like to take one or two questions from the audience. Yeah, perhaps anyone would like to ask questions, please raise your hand, or you can just send or put the questions on the chat box and I will read it for you. Before I hand the time, the floor offered to Mr. Keynote Speaker to respond. All right, anyone? Okay, so we have one participant who have raised questions, Bu Nur Kamila. All right. You may now raise your question, Bu Nur Kamila.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Professor Slamet Setiawan, for the presentation. It was inspiring and also enlightening in a way. You have given a clear, like a definition, also practices that help teachers, I believe, implementing in their classrooms. But one thing I know I've also started to learn about CRT or CRP, and I noticed one thing that may answer the question of whether it suits Indonesian context is that the social equity or the social justice part of the CRT is not really clear in let's say in your definition or the practices. Like we have seen clearly how we can integrate culture in our classrooms, but what does that implementation say about social justice in our classrooms? Because I think social justice is also the foundation of CRT in the first place. Yeah, I wonder how would you position or how would you define social justice in such practices of integrating culture in our classrooms?
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you for the questions, Bu Nur Kamila. The question is about the perspective given by Professor Slamet Setiawan about the definitions of social equity or social justice in the ELT classroom. All right, before Professor Setiawan responds to the questions given by Bu Nur Kamila, do we have still one or two more questions? I'd like to take one more question perhaps, and we still have time that later we can take some more. All right, if there is no more questions, while we're still waiting for others to give questions, while we still have time, I'd like to hand over the floor to Professor Setiawan to respond to the questions given by Nur Kamila. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator, and thank you, Bu Nur Kamila, for very good questions concerning with the social justice and CRT. How can we put social justice when we apply CRT in our classroom? The thing that we have to understand here is the meaning of social justice itself. We do not put social justice like what we understand so far in the very broad communities of Indonesia. Social justice, keadilan sosial, in a very broader sense, it's not like that. But in terms of culturally responsive teaching, social justice here is we give actually a fair treatment for the students who have the opportunity to express, their ideas, their feeling, their experience related to the subject matter. For example, I will take the example from the international, schools in Surabaya. There are many students from different countries, of course, because the name is international students. It is not fair if we force the students, every student, to have the same, materials, the same assignment. For example, okay, the assignment today here is how to make rendang, for example. It is not fair for the Korean students. As a knowledge, yes. Oh, okay, this is a new information or knowledge how to make rendang, but he or they cannot express totally when the topic is very limited. It will be very fair, and just when we give a chance to students from Korea to provide, the materials based on their own local or their favorite food from Korea. So this is the meaning of social justice, just and fair. We cannot force our idea and our assignment to a single assignment to be applied to all students. That's why, again, the assessments, the assignments will vary, as the students in the classroom varies as well. Again, it is not, the concept of social justice is not like Indonesian context, government context, but in the classroom is related to the cultural backgrounds. We give a chance fairly and justly, to the students to express their ideas, the feeling, the knowledge based on through the cultures they have. That's Pak Muklisin. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. That's very, very clear. Okay, so I hope that Bumila, and now the question has been
Thank
already
you,
been
Prof.
answered. And thank you. We also have one participant who has raised questions, Bu Yoga BWK. Bu Yoga, I just want to make sure that you are here with us. Do you have a question?
Yes.
All right,
Good
okay.
morning.
Okay. Good morning.
Okay, Prof. Thank you for the insightful presentations, Prof. Actually, how to say, like, what I find interesting is that sometimes CRT discussions position culture mainly as something owned by students, Prof.
Yeah.
While teachers are implicitly treated as neutral facilitators.
Yep.
So actually teachers also shaped by their own culture and
Right.
then their belief, values, and assumptions,
Sure.
which may
Yep.
influence how they interpret student ideas and respond to classroom diversity. So my question is, Prof, how does the RT address teachers' own culture position and the potential biases, not only the student cultures? So maybe
Wow.
Professor
Yeah.
have
Wow.
insight about it. Thank you, Prof.
Wow. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. That's a very, very good question. Okay, Prof, you may now respond.
Being honest, Pak Muklisin, I'm shivering now, listening to these questions. Why? Because Puyoka asked very essential questions
Very essential question.
related
I
to the
agree.
teacher's role in the classroom, right?
I agree.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So far what we address is students, cultural backgrounds and identities. What about the teachers itself, themselves? Because he is also having inheriting, the identity and cultures. Yes. Now, I will answer the roles. Puyoka, you are true that we actually, our teachers is a facilitator. But at the same time, we can be a model actually for our students. Like I mentioned earlier, instead of, for example, bringing pictures of artists or famous persons, teachers himself or herself actually can be a model. Her house or his house, his activity, the story about the visiting the places that have been through, for example, their pet, can be a models. Now, the important point here is how to avoid biases. Like what I mentioned during the presentations, we have to be open-minded. We have to have a good assumption to our students. We do not judge that the students are the same across the board. They are unique individuals. That's why we have to understand by having CRT in our classrooms, actually, we learn from the students' cultures, we learn traditions, as well as we can actually introduce our own cultures, our own traditions as lecturers or teachers. So again, teachers is not solely being facilitator, passive facilitator. No, but we can be very creative using our own potentials, our own traits, our own traditions, our own culture to be the models. By having this one, students also can understand who is their teacher. They will not, wrongly treat the teachers. Why? Because they know, oh, okay, our teacher is from maybe Medan, and then the culture is like this, the characteristics like this, then we understand the teachers quite well. So that is my answer. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor, for the response given. And that's, I think, has already addressed the questions raised by Bu Yoga. We still have about 5 more minutes before this session ends. So I'd like to take one more questions, and I already have one participant. Yes, okay, Bu Indah. Now, what is your question, Bu?
Okay, thank you, Pak Mulisin. Is my voice clear?
Very.
Yes, loud and clear.
All right, thank you. Good morning, Pak Slamet.
Morning, Bu Indah.
I am Indah, and actually earlier Bu Nur Kamila asked about the position of the social justice in the
Yes.
classroom,
Yes.
and I was wondering about the position of the target language culture, say like a British, American,
Mhm.
or Australian culture in the
Mhm.
art. Is it
Yeah.
considered complementary, secondary, tertiary, or primary? Thank you. Bye-bye.
Good. Thank you so much.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Mulisin, any comment?
No, that's a really good question, sir. I mean that you have already mentioned every single detail about the role of the students' local culture, but what about the target language culture? Now, you may now want to respond, sir.
Yeah. Thank you, moderator, and thank you, Pinda, for very good questions concerning with the target language culture. In the presentations, I've already mentioned that we have to apply what so-called his local as well.
Mm.
Yeah, internally we are preserving and also reflecting our own culture, our local cultures. But at the same time, we also have to introduce, the target language cultures. There is a kind of a good philosophy, Bu Indah, that as a teachers, we have to make complicated things become simple. What is the way? Please introduce the students from the material from the need to probably not the need, but they have to know it. And then from the concrete to abstract, from near to far, from what they experience and they haven't, from our own cultures and the target language cultures. We have to make a balance. Why? Because if we only focus on local cultures, and then our students will be having a very limited knowledge. And remember that language and culture is actually one coin, two sides of one coin. We cannot separate it. If I mention, for example, in Japanese saying, ajining busono, roko soko busono, ajining diri soko lati, then of course, when the language is gone, then the culture is gone too. How can we introduce our, target language cultures? Then of course from the language first, and then we, direct the students, to introduce the target language cultures. We have to know it. Why? Because it is not limited. It is not limited, and we have to appreciate students. We have to predict that later in the future, the students may go abroad, and we have to introduce their cultures too. But the way, of course, then there are many ways. We have many facilities. We have, YouTube. You can provide the information concerning with the target language cultures, and many other facilities actually can be provided to our students. Thank you, Pinda. Thank you, Pak Muktisin.
Thank you, Professor. Thank you, Professor Setiawan, for your response. And thank you for the audience and also the participants in this conference. Unfortunately, the time is up, but we already had a wonderful discussions. We already learned a lot about CRT from the expert of this topic, Professor Setiawan. And that's it from me. Thank you, Professor Setiawan, for being with us this morning. We really appreciate it. Yeah, thank you
Pak
for
Husin. Yeah, thank you.
thank you for the insight that you have given. All right, now back to the rundown, because as already mentioned in the rundown, we are going to have about 15 minutes breaks before we move on with the next keynote session. Thank you. That's it from me. I hope you all have a wonderful seminar. You have a wonderful keynote. Thank you. Let me end. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam.
Thank you, Professor Slamet Setiawan. And thank you, Dr.